Time for the out-of-this-world story from our space. Life's too short for deceit and double lives. Life threw this Opie a curveball with Jim. But now she's stepping up to the plate, bat in hand ready to knock it out of the park. Today in our space love. Lies and lost frequent flyer miles. This is my mom's story and I'm telling it for her. I do have consent to tell it. My dad passed away really unexpectedly when I was 18. I'm now 26. My mom and I were both devastated. We didn't get to say goodbye. And it haunted us for a really long time. My mom 53 female. And dad had met back in elementary school. In this small town. With a population of maybe just over 1,000 people. Mom always says that. She had the biggest crush on my dad. And never got the chance to tell him. My mom's parents ended up moving them to the city. And she said. She thought for sure they'd never see her again. Until her first year of high school. And she walks into class and sees my dad sitting there. In the same class. They quickly picked up right where they left off. And fell in love. My parents had me in their late 20s. They had gotten married when they were 21 in a small, intimate wedding at my grandpa's lakefront property. It was a simple yet beautiful ceremony. Surrounded by their closest friends and family. After they got married, they decided they were going to buy a boat, fix it up and sail around the world. Well, it wasn't really the world. But it was all over Asia. They spent about 3 years doing that. And living at sea, my mom said. Those years were some of the most liberating and fulfilling times of their lives. The freedom of the open sea, the endless horizons, and the different cultures they encountered, enriched their bond. They learned to rely on each other in new ways, navigating both literal and figurative storms together. After 3 incredible years, they decided to settle down, but didn't want to lose the freedom they had grown to love, so they sold their sailboat and bought a houseboat that needed a bit of work. They chose an area where they could still move the houseboat here and there, which fed that little adventure bug of theirs, just enough during their travels. My dad pursued his passion for photography, capturing breathtaking landscapes and intimate portraits of the people they met along the way, and he continued that up until his death. My mom sold little handcrafted jewelry and art pieces. She used her artistic skills and creativity to design unique items that she could sell at various markets, festivals and online. This flexible job allowed her to work from anywhere, including the boat, and complemented their adventurous lifestyle. Additionally, her background in art and design might have also led her to occasionally take up freelance work, such as painting murals or doing custom design projects, which provided a steady stream of income, while allowing her to express her creativity and passion for art. They had the perfect relationship and honestly, everything that I could ever want in life. When my father passed away, even though we didn't get to say our goodbyes, my mom and I both didn't have any regrets. There was never a day that went by where we questioned whether or not he loved us. And there was never a day that went by where we felt that he didn't know that we loved him just as much. But when he passed, there was just this huge emptiness for what seemed like a lifetime. I was so afraid that my mom would never recover, or never find anything remotely like what she had with my dad ever again. And that's not to say that I was eager for my mom to replace my father. That's not what I'm getting at. I just wanted my mom to be happy again. I didn't want my mom to be alone. Then came Jim, 56 male. My mom met Jim 3 years after my dad passed away. It was a chance encounter that neither of them expected, but both desperately needed. At the time, my mom had been invited to showcase her jewelry and art at a local crafts fair by the waterfront, and an event she had almost declined due to her lingering grief and a reluctance to put herself out there. But myself and her friends strongly encouraged her and pushed her out of their comfort zone. My mom's the kind of person that really pours herself into her passions and creativity. And after my father passed, she was creating the most beautiful things. Her friends and I knew that they had to be shared with the world. I'll leave a link in the comments to her online shop. Jim was there at the fair not as a vendor, but as a visitor. He was a senior director for a company for which he traveled every week abroad for business, and if it wasn't weekly, it was monthly. My mom tried to explain what he did to me, but it never actually made sense at the time. She liked to think that she knew what he did, but he liked to keep her in the dark, or gave her just enough information to sort of get her to stop asking questions, or at least stop her from wondering. Their first meeting was unremarkable in its simplicity, yet profound in its impact. She was drawn to a set of intricately designed earrings on my mom's table that, ironically, were inspired by earrings my father had gifted her. He admired their craftsmanship and struck up a conversation with her about her work. My mom, initially reserved, found herself opening up about the inspiration behind her designs, many of which were influenced by her travels with my dad. Jim listened intently, genuinely interested in her stories. He shared his own experiences of working on ships and traveling the world, finding common ground in their mutual love for the seeking adventure. They talked for hours, losing track of time as the fair bustled around them. Over the following weeks, Jim made it a point to visit local markets and fairs, where my mom was showcasing her art. He would stop by her booth, bringing her coffee and engaging in long conversations that ranged from their past adventures to their future dreams. There was a gentleness and understanding in Jim that my mom found comforting. He never tried to overshadow the memory of my dad. He respected it and showed genuine empathy for the loss my mom had endured, and I was happy for her. I was genuinely happy for her and for them. When he said he was in town, he was always around. We go out for dinner together. A lot of times, he'd come over to my mom's place and cook her dinner. She'd go over to his place. But I remember her saying that there was no family photos of the house, no real personal touches. But none of us ever really noticed, because it looked like a bachelor pad. And he traveled a lot, so it sort of made sense. He said he never really had a home base. He said it wasn't until he met my mom that he felt home. Jim had always said that he had never been married, because he just got so busy with work. He said he had been engaged once before, but it never worked out because his fiancée ended up leaving him for another man. So then he said after that, he really put his all into his work, and had a hard time trusting anyone after that. He said that not having anyone in his life allowed him to travel as much as he did, and not feel tied down to anything, or feel like he was leaving anything behind. He gave this sob story, and my mom and I ate it up. My mom would say, "I don't know how a perfect guy like you had stayed single for so long." Eventually my mom and Jim's relationship grew deeper. They were together for nearly 5 years. And then one day Jim took me out for lunch and asked me for my mom's hand in marriage. Of course I cried, because I had said that I wanted her to find someone that made her happy, and to live the rest of her days out, and someone who would treat her just as she deserved. I told him that I was so happy for them, and I'd want nothing more than him to be in our lives. Jim proposed to my mom with this nice, romantic peach date. She came home and told me, and we all cried together. My mom was over the moon, and we started planning the wedding. Jim seemed genuinely happy too, but then there was always those trips. Those business trips that took him away so often. But after the engagement they seemed to happen more often. And then suddenly Jim seemed to act sort of squirrely. He started to bail on my mom a lot more often. He seemed totally uninterested in any wedding planning. Normally while he was on his trips, Jim and my mom would be in constant contact. But a lot more often now. He just disappearing Gostra for a week. He tried to tell her that he was working on this big deal, and it was taking up a lot of time while he was away. Who's trying to land a client who demanded a lot of his time? My mom, of course, forgave him and took the wedding planning on full on. Now like she wanted to have a big wedding. It was going to be really intimate. That's just how she rolled. But it still required a lot of planning. Not only that, but my mom was trying to get him to move into her place. But he would deflect the conversation. He'd say after the wedding. At first my mom brushed off her concerns, believing Jim's excuses about his demanding job. She rationalized that once they were married, things would settle down. However, the nagging doubts in the back of her mind began to grow. Friends and family noticed Jim's increasing absences, and commented on how unusual was for a man engaged to be married to be so disconnected from the wedding preparations. My mom, though trying to remain positive, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She tried to talk to me about her concerns, and I honestly tried to play them off, reminding her that this job was pretty demanding. And he sort of said that before. Earlier on when they first started dating, he had always emphasized how hectic and unpredictable his work schedule could be, often working late into the night, and traveling at a moment's notice. Jim had painted a picture of his career as being all-consuming, which made his absences seem plausible. He said he was dedicated to securing his position and providing a stable future for the both. Then one day, while Jim was supposedly abroad for business, he had a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. The nurses had contacted her. They found her number in his phone, and it turns out that he was actually pretty close to home. So she drove about an hour and a half to the hospital that these people said he was at. She dropped everything and rushed to the hospital, expected to be the first one there to support him. But when she arrived she found a woman and 2 other adults already at his bedside. His wife and children apparently. He was in a daze and said Call my wife, and so they opened his phone. There was a red heart next to my mom's name. And that was the first number that she called. But then, Jim had his actual wife as his emergency contact, whom a different nurse at the hospital had also called. So it was all just one big family reunion. You can guess that when my mom arrived, this other woman asked who the heck she was. And they both looked shocked and disturbed to see each other. But Jim was out cold with some pain meds, so we couldn't answer any questions that they had. Right away. There was a bit of drama too. Of course, his actual wife had called security to get my mom out of the room. And then my mom and his little hidden wife ended up having a bit of a heated conversation in the halls of the hospital before the security guard told them both to leave and sort their stuff outside. And surprisingly, this woman had actually calmed down enough to listen to what my mom was saying. My mom had shown her years of text messages and pictures of the three of us together, the ring that he had bought her, the wedding planning she had done. My mom told her about this downtown apartment that he apparently had. This woman, I'll call her Jen for her own privacy, had confirmed that he was a senior director for a company he basically worked for consulting team, which meant he had to travel abroad to manage global teams. Jim and Jenny had been married for 28 years. They had 2 daughters, one was my age and almost 24. Jen said that he was constantly working away and was maybe home for a week out of the month. She said that it had been like that for the last 6 years. That's when Jen also said that the place that was apparently Jim's apartment was a coworker of Jim's and he was using as an Airbnb, which all started to make sense, given the lack of personal touches in the apartment. So then it sort of clicked, because when my mom and Jim first started dating, he was really slow to invite her over to his place for quite some time, and we're guessing that was when he was trying to come up with some deal with his coworker for that to be his dirty deeds den. So there they were standing outside the hospital, both reeling from the shock. My mom in tears realized that she had been living in a carefully constructed lie. Jim had a whole other family, a whole other life, that he had hidden from her for nearly 5 years. The pain of my dad's loss resurfaced, compounded by the betrayal of a man she thought she could trust again. But despite the heartbreak, she found a strange sense of solidarity with Jen. They were both victims of Jim's deceit, and in the shared pain they found a connection. And Jen really didn't have to let her be there. But she did. They decided to confront Jim together, once he regained consciousness, to demand answers and to ensure that he faced the consequences of his actions. Jen had actually admitted that she felt like Jim had been hiding something for quite some time now, but could never figure out how to unlock his phone when it was around. But he guarded his phone with his life, which he did. Can confirm whenever he got a late-night caller, was on the phone or texting, he'd say he was doing work. And we believed him because of his line of work. He worked all over the world. And he said his clients were all over the world. When Jim finally woke up, the truth came spilling out. He had been managing to juggle 2 lives for years, using his frequent chapels as a cover for his deception. He claimed he loved both women and couldn't bear to let either of them go. But Jen ended up filing for divorce shortly after that. And obviously my mom cut things off. I guess they both ended up finding out that he was talking to women abroad too, at least 4 others. Jen forced him to reach out to these women and cut things off and admit that he was cheating on all of them and had a double life. Jen also had contacted his company and told them he was using his worker later travels as a cover for maintaining multiple lives, which quickly led to the loss of his job and reputation. Being a senior director in a company that values trust and integrity, his deceit violated company policies, but also tarnished his professional reputation, as some of the women he was seeing, or big clients of the company. Mom and Jen kept in contact, and have actually gotten pretty close. I'm encouraging my mom to get back out there, and that the dating pool isn't scary. Not everyone is like Jim. There are genuine, honest people looking for love and companionship. She deserves to find someone who will cherish her and treat her with respect and love. She deserves. I remind her of the strength and resilience she's shown throughout her life, especially after losing Dad, and then going through the heartbreak with Jim. She's proven that she can weather life storms and come out stronger. I have faith that she will find happiness again. And this time, it will be with someone who truly deserves her. It's like the universe said, let's throw in a second family just for kicks. I guess Jim really took the whole work-life balance thing to a whole new level. I mean, sure, his work kept him busy, but I don't think busy quite covers maintaining 2 separate households and keeping track of who's who and his contacts list. And you have to hand it to him for creativity. Using his business trips as a cover. For clandestine family reunions. That's a mix of multitasking. But I guess when you're playing with fire, eventually you're going to get burned. Or Jim's case hospitalized. Hey, at least your mom and Jen found solidarity in their shared deception. That's like a twisted sisterhood. Brought together by one man's epic failure at monogamy. As for Jim, well, I hope he enjoys his newfound freedom. Because he's going to have a lot of time on his hands. Now that his job and reputation have gone down the drain. Faster than his web of lies unraveling. But seriously, who knew midlife crisis could involve so much deception? I bet Jim's therapist is booking extra sessions. Just to unpack the layers of his lies. And poor Jen finding out. Her marriage was just a big side gig. For Jim's international playboy lifestyle. At least she had the guts to kick him to the curb. And expose his whole raw operation. As for your lovely mom, let's face it. After Jim, she deserves nothing less than a first-class ticket to happiness. Have you ever been bamboozled like this? Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on Our Space. Be sure to like and subscribe. And hit the notification bell. So don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.